welcome to How the Heavens Go. I'm your host, Mark Lesmeister. In our first episode, we looked at various motions of the sun as seen from the Earth. In this episode, we're going to look at some models that ancient astronomers proposed to explain those motions. But first, let's look at what Bag 2 of our kit contributed to our model.
After Bag 1, we had a mostly stationary base constructed. With Bag 2, we now have a system of gears, which will produce several rotations or perhaps circular motions at different speeds. This seemingly minor point actually demonstrates something fundamental about celestial motion, which appeared to ancient astronomers to be quite different from motion here on Earth. On Earth, things tend to move in straight lines. An apple falling from a tree will go straight down. Something rolling across a flat surface will go in a straight line. And earthly motions don't necessarily repeat themselves. The apple stops when it hits the ground. The rolling car seems to run out of energy. In the heavens, motion is cyclical. The sun, moon, and stars rise in the east and set in the west. The moon goes through the same phases every month. The sun follows the path of the ecliptic every year. Even the planets eventually return to the same point in the sky. This cyclical and apparently eternal motion led many astronomers to the conclusion that objects in the heavens moved in that most perfect and eternal of shapes, the circle. Sometimes the Earth was seen as moving along one of these circular paths. Philolaus, circa 470 to 385 BC, created a system where both the Earth and the Sun orbited around a central fire, which should not be confused with the Sun. The central fire was not visible from the Earth because humans supposedly only occupied one side of the Earth, and that side always faced away from the fire. In Philolaus' model, the Earth orbited the central fire every 24 hours, while the Sun orbited the fire once a year. This would account for the diurnal motion of the Sun, since the Sun would appear to cross the sky for half the day when Earth was on that side of its orbit. And the Sun would shift its position relative to the fixed stars, completing the cycle over the course of a year.
I couldn't find any specific references to how Philolaus might have explained the shift in the height of the Sun in the sky, but a model that includes a orbiting sun could easily explain that sort of thing. Let us say that this outer ring here represents the plane of the Earth's orbit. It's not the size of the Earth's orbit, relatively speaking, because that would have to be smaller than the sun's orbit here. But if in this model we have the sun moving in an orbit that is inclined to that orbit of the Earth, then as the sun goes around its orbit over the year, its position, its height in the sky would appear to shift the way that our sun actually does appear to shift in its height in the sky at noon. So this is probably the explanation that would have been offered in Philolaus' model.
Philolaus was a Pythagorean, that is, one of the followers of Pythagoras. You know, the folks with the famous theorem. And we don't know how much of this system can be credited to him and how much to his fellow Pythagoreans. Whoever invented it deserves the credit for being willing to imagine the Earth being in motion. But much of this system seems to be more inspired by philosophy and Pythagorean mysticism than actual observation. For example, Philolaus includes a mysterious anti-Earth that always hides on the opposite side of the central fire. What is the purpose of this? How does he know it's there? If he knew, he kept it secret. That's the problem with secret societies like the Pythagoreans. A model that may have been more grounded in observation was proposed by Aristarchus of Samos, who lived from about 310 BC to 230 BC. His system had a non-moving sun at the center. Such a system is called a heliocentric model. Helios was the Greek personification of the sun. The planets moved around the sun following circular orbits. The orbits in increasing size were Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, which is the same order we use today. Aristarchus even had the moon orbiting the Earth. The model proposed by Aristarchus is remarkable for how much it resembles our modern understanding of the solar system. Let's use the model from the kit to demonstrate those features of this system. In the system proposed by Aristarchus, as in our model, the Sun and the fixed stars are stationary, and the Earth rotates on its axis once a day. This produces the diurnal motion of the Sun and the stars across the sky.
In order to demonstrate how the model proposed by Aristarchus would account for the apparent motion of the Sun relative to the fixed stars, we need to set up some fixed star constellations of our own. Now, the constellations that the Sun appears to move through over the course of the year is called the zodiac. And so we're going to set up a demonstration that involves a mini zodiac, which has 4 constellations. We're going to have this constellation here. This is the constellation Cat Dog from the Nickelodeon culture. And this is the constellation Cup. And this is the constellation Snow Globe. And this is the constellation Gyroscope. So here we have all 4 constellations in my little mini zodiac arranged at locations around the Sun-Earth system at the level of the Earth's orbit. We have the constellation Cat Dog over here on the left, and the Earth right now is positioned so that you can see the constellation Cat Dog in the night sky at this time of the year. However, the constellation Snow Globe is blocked by the position of the Sun. We could say that the Sun is in the constellation Snow Globe here. So a quarter of a year goes by, and now in the night sky we can see the constellation Cup, but we cannot see the constellation Gyroscope because that is on the opposite side of the orbit. It's blocked by the Sun. The Sun is in the constellation Gyroscope at this time. And we go over in this position, and now at the nighttime sky we can see the constellation Snow Globe, but we can't see the constellation Cat Dog. And similarly over here, now we can see the constellation Gyroscope in the night sky, but we cannot see the constellation Cup. So this is how we explain the apparent shift in the Sun's position relative to the fixed stars in a system with a stationary Sun and a moving Earth.
A model with a stationary Sun can't use a tilt in the Sun's orbit relative to the Earth's orbit to explain the shift in the Sun's height in the sky over the course of the year. However, we can accomplish the same thing by having the Earth's rotation tilted to the plane of the Earth's orbit. The axis of the Earth's rotation is tilted about 23 degrees from a line that is perpendicular to the Earth's orbit. I put a stick on the model to show the direction the axis points. The axis points pretty much in the same direction in space as the Earth orbits around the Sun. The directions that the Earth's axes point do change over time in a motion called precession. This is similar to the motion of a spinning gyroscope. However, it takes about 26,000 years for this precession to undergo one cycle, so we can ignore it for now. Right now, the north pole of the Earth is pointed more or less at the star Polaris. I am recording this on December 21st, which is the winter solstice in the northern hemisphere. The model depicts the relative positions of the Earth and the Sun on that day. As you can see, the northern hemisphere of the Earth is tilted away from the Sun so that the Sun will be low in the sky at noon, and the sunlight hitting the northern hemisphere will be indirect. And the opposite is true of the southern hemisphere, which is right now having their summer solstice. As the Earth continues in its orbit, we move away from the solstice towards the equinox. In the northern hemisphere, this is the spring equinox, and if you look carefully at the calendar on the ring in very front of the model, you'll see that it points at late March. And then, continuing on, we go all the way to the summer solstice in the northern hemisphere. As you can see, the north pole of the Earth continues to point in the same direction as it did at the December solstice, but now the northern hemisphere is tilted toward the sun and the southern hemisphere is tilted away. So this is the summer solstice in the northern hemisphere and the winter solstice in the southern hemisphere. In this episode, we have seen how heliocentric or sun-centered models, such as that proposed by Aristarchus, can explain the basic apparent motions of the sun as seen from Earth. However, even in ancient times, there were objections to the idea that the Earth was in motion. Some of these objections were philosophical, but some were scientific. We will talk about some geocentric models in our next episode. Until then, look to the stars.